Welcome back to my channel. My name is Caela, and today we're going to be talking about ableism in the deaf community. So I'm going to be talking about some terms to just kind of preference the deaf culture, community, everything and anything. So first thing is deaf. This is a term commonly used for people who have a severe hearing loss. They could be born with it, or they could have lost it through something else. If I look down, these are my notes, so sorry. Then culturally deaf. You are culturally deaf if you choose to participate in the deaf culture or community. Just because you are deaf does not mean you are culturally deaf and participate in deaf stuff, which is okay. That's your own choice, which is amazing. Deafened is when you were born hearing or hard of hearing, and gradually or suddenly you lost all of your hearing. This does not mean you're culturally deaf either. Then hard of hearing. Hard of hearing is when you are not profoundly deaf or profound, like you lost your hearing, you still have some of your hearing, but you are not hearing. You can also be hearing impaired. Okay, those are just to preface anything I'm going to talk about today in how ableism affects deaf culture. So, we all know that in 2021 and 2022, specifically, people want to be politically correct, saying you are deaf, but you have to capitalize the deaf, and you're not hard of hearing, you're deaf, you should say this, you should say that. Well, that's kind of being ableist, not gonna lie. Ableist is kind of, you think you're better, or you have some of an ideation before and you just don't really believe it. When I get ableist comments against me a lot, and people don't even know they're being ableist, especially when they make the comment of, you're not even that deaf, you can talk. Talking has nothing to do with signing, has nothing to do with being deaf or being hard of hearing, or you're not deaf, you're hard of hearing. It's kind of up to me to identify it. I was born hard of hearing-ish deaf. We're not 100% sure. But when I grew up, I was more hard of hearing. And then when I was, I think 19-ish, 19, 20, I got the diagnosis of being severe hard of hearing, so I'd be considered deaf. And a lot of people don't understand that, especially because I do talk, and the ableist comments against me are crazy. Some other things that really affect deaf people that people don't understand is kind of like an ableist view. Movies. When I was a kid, I know technology has changed so much, which is amazing, but when I was a kid, I went to the movie theater and I would have these big clunky headphones that would be hooked up, and I get to adjust the movies, like the movie volume or something. And more than half the time, the headphones didn't work. They never synced up. Or I have auditory processing disorder as well, and I would need captions, and I would never be received captions. I know for other hard of hearing or deaf people, accents are kind of the death of them, meaning like having an accent and trying to lip read. Not all deaf people lip read. Trying to understand them is really hard. It's really hard for me. Whenever I was in college and I would have professors with accents, it had nothing to do with how smart they were or anything, or their education experience or anything. It was just I couldn't understand accents because I so heavily rely on lip reading that I would have to transfer out of their class. And when they didn't have accommodations, or they just said, study harder, it's kind of being ableist and being like, well, you can do that because you don't have a disability, but I have a disability and I can't do that. And I don't think people really understand how ableist this society really is. More in the broad sense of disability as well. When I was a service dog handler, still really miss Snoopy, I had so many comments. Sorry, hold on. I had a notification. I had so many comments of people coming up to me, actually with my mom too. And it was like, it is so amazing that you're raising this dog to go to a disabled person. And then I would have to look at them and be like, no, she's my dog, thank you. And then they would be like, oh, what disability do you have? Or what's wrong with you? Or they would just be so awkward and uncomfortable. It'd make me so awkward and uncomfortable. And I got that so many times. So many people didn't ever believe that I could have a disability, mostly because I don't even like explaining this because it's affected me my whole life and I hate talking about it because it's just like so stupid. People have a notion in their head of what disabled people look like, and if you don't really fit their stereotype, then like they just can't comprehend it at all. Like, I remember when I was at work, I had this one individual who perpetuates ableism, and I can't stand it, but at the same time, like, I'm just not gonna say anything. And he was just like, imagine having to wear jewelry so ugly, which she's talking about my medical bracelet, and he was like, that's disgusting that you have to have a medical bracelet. Like, it's disgusting to you, but it saves my life because people know I'm epileptic and I have a heart condition. So when I'm going down and I'm having a seizure and a heart attack at the same time, the paramedics can help save my life. So it's disgusting to you and you're embarrassed for me, which I'm not embarrassed to wear a medical bracelet. I've been wearing it for like 3 years now, but just the fact that he like was thinking that and had to say it to me was very just gross in itself. And then another time he actually did that was when I am a waitress, and we do not allow dogs in the restaurant. And I'm the only person, I know service dogs and emotional support dogs. I've now realized after being a handler for a couple of years, understanding that there's so much misinformation that a lot of people just don't know. And if they do know, they just don't care. If you have an emotional support animal, you are not granted public access whatsoever. And this woman came in and her dog had an emotional support ESA on her vest, which, first of all, service dogs never have to be marked. And ESAs, you have no public access, so no one really needs to know if it's an emotional support dog or not, because you have no public access rights. Whereas service dog handlers prefer it because they do have public access rights and they want to make sure people know it's a service dog, so don't touch them, don't interact with them. So her dog was a tiny little dog and it was moving around everywhere, and I know what a service dog is supposed to look like in a public setting because I was a handler. And one of my coworkers like, there's a dog in here, and the guy who I'm referring to has made a lot of ableist comments, was like you shouldn't kick her out or anything. And I'm like, I'm not kicking her out. She doesn't have a right to be in here. And I actually talked to her and I was like, is this a service dog? And she said yes. And so you're allowed to ask 2 questions. Is it a service dog? If it is, what task do they perform? So then I said, okay, what task is it? And she said emotional support. And I said, unfortunately, emotional support dogs are not covered federally because they have to have no training. Like, service dogs go through extensive training. Emotional support dogs, you don't have to have any training. And so you're not allowed to be inside with your dog. We are more than happy to have you go outside. I'd be more than happy to accommodate you out there. And then she's like, it's a service dog. And I said, okay, what task then? She said emotional support again. And I was like, that's not a task, ma'am. I'm so sorry. She started screaming at me. She ended up trying to sue me. She asked for my phone number. She could be hearing from my lawyer. I knew I was in my right and everything. But then the guy I worked with was really upset at me. He said, how dare you? Like, you're being ableist, which I'm not. If you had a disability that really made you that uncomfortable to be without your dog, then you would have a service dog, not an emotional support dog. Not that I'm trying to wish down upon any ESA owners, but if it's that bad, then you would get your dog trained for emotional support, or you would train it yourself. And he said that I had no idea what it's like to have a emotional support dog or a service dog, and how disgusted he is of me for like making that woman leave. But at the same time, like, that dog was not behaving well, and if I was in there with my service dog and that dog tried to attack or play with my service dog, distracting it, I could legally sue her. And I understand that there's just some people who just talk to talk, and that's kind of him. But at the same time, he has no idea how ableist he is being just because of his own opinion, and kind of disregarding anyone but himself. And it's like that a lot. A lot of people don't understand how ableist they are. They just have an opinion, and if you don't agree with them, then they just get angry at you. And sometimes I totally want to come on here and say I'm such an advocate for disabled people, disabled rights. But at the same time, in real life situations, I kind of just take it, because you can't really, it's harder just to be like, you're ableist, and then just being like, the fuck are you saying? Like, I have other coworkers. I used to wear a shirt that said everyone belongs, and I got it at an inclusive cafe in Avon, Connecticut, and they employ people who have disabilities. And one of my coworkers saw it and was like, I was telling him how I got it, why I got it, and he was like, you got no autism, like, why the fuck are you wearing that? And like, okay, I don't have autism, but I still have disabilities, and it still affects my daily life. And I don't know, just ableism affects everything, and people just don't ever realize it, which is really sad, because their view on the world is why we have such a hard time getting accessibility. So I know I talked a little about deafness, like ableism, but there's just ableism in every disorder, which is really hard. So what are your thoughts, comments, anything about it? And yeah, thanks for watching, guys.